WrestleTalk.
Mum, I want a G1.
I hate you.
We've got a G1 at home.
That was my joke. I wrote it down. Oh, no. You got there first by virtue of being host.
Apologies. I am Lugo D.A.D. I'm joined by the Professor of the Truth, your Jam That Champion, though disrespectfully still does not have the belt on his shoulder.
Keep
Dan
putting it on your
Layton.
side.
Oh, I actually don't think it's here, bud.
What? Oh, it's over there.
This is how much he disrespects that belt. And welcome to the WrestleTalk Podcast review of AEW Collision. Please do press the subscribe button and give us a little thumbs up to help us in the algorithm. Leave a comment down below if you're watching this on demand. If you're watching live, get in your chat over there. Join the conversation. Join the SWAF Nation giving your thoughts to Collision. But if you want your thoughts read out in the air or any of your questions answered, WrestleTalk.com/support will read out all of your Stark remarks, your no mega chats before the end of the show, all the ones above the $5 amount.
We've had a Omega on Collision now, so no Omega officially cannot count.
Stark remarks.
Stark remarks,
can't do CMDMs anymore because he's, well, I mean, obviously
we never should have.
apart from the fact that he's the devil.
Of course he's the devil, but he's also appearing at War Games.
Yeah, he's doing both.
He's doing all of it.
Yeah. He is going to be at Full Gear next week, revealed as the devil.
Yeah.
Then the week after that is going to be on Team Rhodes.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Survivor Series.
Yeah, and at the same time, he'll pull double duty by being Shinsuke Nakamura's opponent.
And then we'll show up in Impact.
And then he's in the post-credit scenes of the Marvels. He's everywhere.
God, they're getting desperate, the MCU, aren't they? Excuse me. But anyway, let's get into this episode of Collision, which featured, I would say, probably the biggest bit of news coming out of this show.
Yeah.
Good show, I thought. Up and down the card, very, very good wrestling. Every match designed to progress either matches that are going to be happening on Dynamite or matches that are going to be happening at the pay-per-view. So thumbs up in that remarks. In that regards, rather. But the biggest news coming out of the show is this segment where Tony Khan and Bryan Danielson, who had a big bandage over his eye,
which we'll talk about,
announcing tickets are going on sale for All In.
Yeah.
You know,
on the 1st of December.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. Well, the huge announcement was you could sign up for pre-sale on that already.
Which is a massive announcement.
Massive. Definitely worth the TV time dedicated to it and the social media buzz that came before it. Yeah. Check out our episode we did on that where we talked about the boy who cried wolf. And the other announcement, I think the much more bigger announcement, isn't that Bryan Danielson will be at All In 2024, along with basically saying Jamie Hayter and Pac will also be there. They are doing the Continental Classic, their own version of the G1.
Yeah.
It's a 2-block round-robin tournament. At least, I mean, I'm going to assume it's a 2-block thing because they said that the finals are going to take place at World's End. But for the next, 6 weeks, every show, every week is going to have 2 matches. So matches on Dynamite, matches on Collision, matches on Rampage and such.
Yeah.
But we are getting this G1 round-robin tournament with 12 of the best competitors in AEW. Danielson is the only person announced for it thus far.
Yeah. The Observer, I wanted to check the rules before we went on, just to make sure if anything had been announced officially. But really all we've got is what was said on Collision, which is, yes, 12-man round-robin tournament, 12 wrestlers divided into 2 groups of 6, and the tournament starts on the 22nd of November edition of Dynamite.
So you did say it was 2 groups of 6.
2 groups of 6. Tournament matches take place across all 3 of AEW shows, where to get people to try and watch Rampage. Decent shout. Starting on November 22nd. League finals take place on December 27th, 2 days before my birthday. And then the tournament finals will take place on World's End, which is December 30th, the day after my birthday. So that's all in the Observer, by the way. The stuff about my birthday's all there. So yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
I love the G1.
Yeah.
I love a round-robin tournament. We actually had our own version of the G1 in the office last year, playing the game Speedrunners, which we called the G-Run.
Nice.
And we, organized that as a big round-robin tournament to crown an eventual winner. And we've seen in the past, boy howdy, AEW sure loves its tournaments.
Oh, big time.
In fact, just announced a tournament for the ROH TV title. So, because of course, that's why Samoa Joe vacated it, so they could do another tournament.
Don't get me started on that.
But the idea of doing the G1 I think is fascinating. I think if I was to be sort of glib about this as to, hey, why are they doing this? I think it's because Danielson just wants to do it.
Yeah.
This is this tournament, much in the same way that the New Japan Strong Women's Championship was a belt that was made for Mercedes Moné to win. This Continental Classic is a G1 tournament designed for Bryan Danielson so he can wrestle a G1 tournament and win a G1 tournament.
Yeah, it's interesting because, first of all, Boy Who Cried Wolf, this one is probably the biggest announcement they've made since announcing All In, by virtue of it being an announcement, really, as opposed to all the other ones, which were just, hey, I've got a microphone in my hand, I've got something to say. Then when it was specifically Danielson saying, I've always wanted to compete in a tournament like this, everyone is able to read between those lines. That's where I'm sure that I'm not even the only one in the room to come up with the mum I want G1 joke. I'm sure everyone has made it over the weekend. That element of it was kind of interesting in terms of reading between the lines. I don't know though, it's exciting. I've been talking about wanting a G1 for the women's division in WWE. It's interesting that they had Eddie Kingston go in to the G1 this year. Was Moxley signed to AEW when he went into the G1 that time?
Not by that, because he left in 2018. Or start of 2019, maybe.
2019, Double or Nothing 2019.
So he'd have been signed then.
Right.
That point.
So they've obviously got the working relationship with NJPW. So it's interesting that rather than allowing Danielson to go off there, I think probably more likely because it's his final year, they want to try their best to get everything they can out of him, and so using his star power and the fact that he's never been in the G1. Am I right in that he's never been in the G1?
No.
Even pre WWE, the idea of him in that kind of tournament on home soil, it is really funny that they had him mummified. Objectively, it's very funny. I know, orbital bone. I don't actually know the medical nuances of how long it takes for recovery, what you are and aren't able to do with recovery. I know Undertaker wrestled with the Phantom of the Opera mask. I know footballers who are going around with the mask on as well. So I'm sure. Well, I want to say I'm sure they wouldn't do this if he wasn't going to be medically okay. It's just that this is a lot sooner than I was expecting.
I think it was a lot sooner than they were expecting. Tony Khan even says, against all odds, Danielson is going to be within this tournament.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's not in the first few weeks. So the tournament starts, but he's not going to have his first match in that tournament for a couple more weeks.
So you can build up to
the Danielson time in this, because it is doing a G1 is a very interesting concept. So the way, if you haven't seen the G1, here's how it works. You've got 2 blocks, 6 wrestlers in each block, and each of those wrestlers wrestles each other once. And the idea being then you accrue points, you get the points for winning, you get points for this and the other, time limit draws and stuff. And then the winners of those 2 blocks will then face each other at the G1 Climax. That is your eventual winner. That will be what will happen at World's End here in AEW. What's fascinating there for wrestlers, and why I think Bryan Danielson wants to work it, is how do you tell stories? How can you tell a story through a tournament? And that's what I think is really, for someone like Bryan Danielson, who just loves pro wrestling and the art of pro wrestling, the art of storytelling within pro wrestling, what story can I tell? I know people have been fancy booking AEW G1s pretty much since its inception, because it took so much from New Japan.
Yeah.
Even doing an AEW versus New Japan G1, I think would be really interesting. Will we see names? I know they said top AEW talent, but that doesn't mean you can't have someone like an Okada to try and build some interest in for that Wrestle Kingdom match. Or a Naito, or probably not a Naito because he just won the last one, but something along those lines, a name from New Japan that could be in the tournament to be whoa, what an attraction.
Like a Zack Sabre Jr.
A Zack Sabre Jr. Is a very good example. I'm really excited for this though. I think this is going to be, because one of the things that AEW does well and does better than a lot of other North American promotions, it's in-ring wrestling. Yeah. And it is in-ring work. It is work rate wrestling. It's that indie style of pro wrestling that was so popular in 2018 with the birth of All In that led into the creation of AEW, that it's missing some of that. So I think being able to do this tournament is a way to kind of make sure, hey, AEW is back. I had a lot of this about on Dynamite last week. I kept saying to Will, it's like, this feels like the Dynamite of old. This is the sort of show when it's like, it's Samoa Joe versus Keith. It's like, that is what I expect from AEW. Like, that's the sort of thing I expect them to do. So, yeah, this feels like a very AEW thing to do, to be like and this is what sets us apart from the competition.
Yeah, it's also been it's been a difficult year for them in a number of different ways on and off screen. Like, you know, all the off screen drama has been spoken about to death, but the on screen material hasn't been particularly interesting, at least to me. And I know a few people who have had who are incredibly passionate for AEW have had a similar sort of struggle where it's just not lived up to what it once was. Like, it had that incredible first 2, 3, 4 even years, and then various different things. I think this was the period Tony Khan ran into a bunch of struggles of trying to figure out how to.
He had a bad 2022.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
And I think outside of the MJF stuff,
which has been great.
I would agree. Like, I think the MJF stuff has saved the company over the summer leading into the winter.
Yeah, and it's pure charisma and energy and leading the character. I mean, like, this, when I think back to all, I mean, like, and I'm not trying to like write them off completely, because let's be fair, they All In was a massive success. Like, it was a world beating success in many different ways, and as someone who went, it was a fantastic night. But yeah, this idea of like reclaiming that element, and they then had a really bad run of press the past week or so with the Ric Flair stuff. So as a way of, you know, showing that the AEW that you fell in love with, and that for many people, and this is where the idea of wrestling media and wrestling journalism being objective over this, what essentially is a creative medium, it's not a real sport, no matter what they try and make us think it is. Because there are a lot of people who say, like, AEW saved my fandom. There was an article in Fightful recently from someone who said, you know,
Molly Bell,
exploring their, like, you know, complex feelings about the current state of AEW, but one of the things that they said was that AEW saved their fandom, and I know a lot of people probably watching this show felt the same.
There was a video that's been shared around a lot over the weekend of Baron Corbin laughing at someone coming out dressed as a big dog on SmackDown to be like, this is what WWE was.
Yes.
Like, this is what this show was on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And it's things like that is what drove a lot of people to AEW. You're right, like that whole idea of saved my fandom, because a lot of people were tapping out of wrestling.
Because it was, and that's why we always talk about the healthy industry being important. Like, do you think that, I mean, a part of it was the crazy man booking a show for himself. And a part of it was the fact that there was no competition. The fact that there is competition now is a good thing for the industry as a whole. I always try and talk about how, rather than getting into tribalism, how lucky we are to have them all. And it's great that AEW now are offering, or at least telling us about this new tournament, which is, it just sort of screams them. Do you know what I mean? And even down to the name Continental Classic really works for me. It's got that kind of great old school ring to it, which
it's very 80s.
Yeah,
which
I really like it.
Kind of like that NWA style of Crockett, you know, that Tony Khan very much is a fan of.
But of course, he's got a lot more money than Crockett, and he's not going to sit down and take this.
Yeah, I curious to know what other names are going to be announced for this tournament.
Yeah, like, should we fantasy book it?
Because I think you want to have, like, Danielson obviously is likely going to be the person who either wins this or makes it to the finals of this at World's End. But it's, who are the other 11 names? I'd love to see an Andrade in this.
Oh, yeah.
A Roosh getting a great singles run in there. And actually, like, even some tag guys getting some singles run, like putting a Dax Harwood in this, I think would be fascinating. You know, in my dream scenario, Kenny Omega would be part of this. You don't want to put champions in there, so, like, you wouldn't put MJF in the tournament.
Your man out of Aussie Open.
Kyle Fletcher. Great shout. Like, Kyle's a great shout to do this. Not likely to win, but goes out there to have great matches. Because that's the other thing, is you need to be able to have people that can take the losses, take the L's, but still can put on the great showing in there.
Did you see Lance Archer had Wacko Lance Archer in there?
Yeah, Lance Archer. Konosuke Takeshita, I'd love to see, like, as part of this tournament, speaking of the Don Callis family.
Yeah.
A
Wardlow, obviously Wardlow. Like, I mean, I know he's sort of potentially in this.
That's the thing, is, like, I think you probably want to keep Wardlow out because it's likely him and MJF at World's End for the title. But like a Moxley, like, you know, a Claudio in a G1 style tournament, brilliant. In fact, actually, if anything, AEW's problem they've got with this tournament is there's actually too many names,
right,
to that could be in part of this tournament.
The other the counter to that assertion, which is fair, is that you also have to book the show outside of the Continental Classic. So like you kind of, it's lucky that it's not lucky, they've got enough talent to be able to pull off a regular show and also this tournament. That's that's a really good state of affairs.
There'll also likely be draws within there as well. So if you're going to have like half-hour time limit draws within that means that you're going to have half-hour chunks of your wrestling show taken up with one match.
And look, I mean, the idea of this time limit draw thing, which sounds to me, I mean, there's a lot of people who we talked last week and we got in a bit of trouble about the idea of Americans not liking a tie. But like, something that's really interesting about the concept of there being a tie, this idea, and which we don't see that often in wrestling. We do see it more often in AEW than I've seen it, certainly in all my years of being a fan. But when you watch the G1, there are some matches and they start doing the countdown, and it is that countdown that gets you really, because not only is it like this match might end in a draw, there are stakes to that for the tournament at large. So it becomes desperate. It becomes like, I need to find a pin. And I remember, I can't for the life of me remember who it was, but there was a match in the G1 this year that went down to like 5 seconds and they got the pin, and it was like such a moment of I'm on the edge of my seat, like clutching at my face kind of thing. Yeah. So it's a great format.
Okada Omega. Yeah. Like, their third encounter was the time limit draw in the G1. Their second encounter. But either way, like within that sort of like 4-match period is like an incredible moment. And I love those 30-minute draws. But you like a Hangman Page, I think would be great in this. Swerve. Yeah. Like, could be Keith Lee. Like there's like, as I said, there's almost too much talent. And that's not including guys that I think could do with a really good shot within this. I'm thinking of someone like a Stu Grayson. Stu Grayson, who got re-signed by AEW and has disappeared again. Yeah. Like he was moved to ROH, paired with the Righteous, but now obviously the Righteous have gone over to AEW. So old Stu Grayson, like he's not with the Dark Order anymore. Yeah. He's not with the Righteous anymore. He's just sort of like, I don't know what he's doing.
Gives you something to fight for.
But Stu Grayson is an incredible in-ring worker. And he is the sort of guy you can like reliably throw out there. You'll have a great match. Almost like a Carl Fletcher type level guy. So I'd love to see that. I know Eva Luno was putting out a call to put there, was what made me think of Stu Grayson. It's like, I'd love to be part of this. It's unlikely that Eva Luno will be part of this. But hey, like, I wouldn't mind it. Because I think some of those guys are really interesting. You need to have your Toriano. Every G1 needs a Toriano. I'm not saying that Eva Luno is a Toriano, but a Danhausen could be a Toriano of the tournament, and I'd be quite glad of that. Because one of the great G1 moments for me is when Toriano pinned Moxley. Right. And this whole thing of just like, it's John Moxley just left WWE. He's the Death Rider. He's this guy. The first person to pin him outside of WWE is Toriano. Like you want those sorts of moments within there as well. Danhausen would be a fabulous addition like that.
My triplet, Kip Sabian.
Yeah. Yeah, another guy like you could just do with a great shot.
Just looking at the list, and then that's it. What do you use it for? Obviously, it's a vehicle for Danielson to get his G1, but it's also a vehicle to, like, as you say, build a star,
make some names,
but also then make your names in your mid card and things like that, and give people a chance to show what they've got.
Give them those moments that people will remember.
It's a great shout.
I'm seeing some calls here like Bandido, Buddy Matthews. Bandido's a great shout.
Buddy Matthews. Oh,
Isaiah Cassidy.
Go on then.
Like Miro, Malachi Black, Pac, Orange Cassidy. Like there is a bunch of names in here that would be fabulous in this tournament. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time. However, like if we're going to look at the good blueprints of this, you want to look at TNA's Bound for Glory series that they used to do.
Sure.
It was a tournament in which you accrued points. You could also lose points. But it was also a tournament where some people had more matches than others.
Yeah.
Which
is, fair.
So some people got to wrestle 20 matches to earn points, whereas some people only got to wrestle 6.
Sure.
And somehow some of those people who wrestled 6 matches earned more points than Samoa Joe, who wrestled 10 matches, but actually ended up on minus 10 points because he kept getting himself DQ'd, which lost him points.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Carry on.
I'm just saying. Like, Jeff Jarrett's right there.
They don't have to give me a mic. Yeah, chuck him in it.
You can grab Jeff and be like, Jeff, what did you do for your Bound for Glory series? Like, well, let me tell you. And he could tell you exactly what little genius there is on how to make this a really competent tournament.
See, the issue is, I don't know if he's joking.
Excuse me. Let's get into your Stark remarks and see what you think of this announcement. And Will Campbell's going to kick things off to say, hey guys, we all know it has to be Eddie versus Ricky in one of the block finals, right? Winner gets Danielson. I like that a lot. Oh. Also, if it is Ricky versus Danielson 3 at World's End, I think Ricky should finally get put over. What are your thoughts? I like that a lot.
Yeah, I hadn't even really thought about that. I hadn't even thought about Starks being in there, to be honest.
I think because he's a current champion.
And because for me, he's doing so well. And I guess having been the winner of the Owen, you know, I hadn't really thought of this as being him being someone who needed this kind of thing. But then that's the wrong way to think about it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You know.
Team Tashuls has been a member for 26 months in a row. Says Pirate Danielson to AEW confirmed. What a great episode with a ton of fun wrestling. Love you all and God bless. A very nice remark.
Did he do a promo recently without the big?
Not on TV.
Wasn't it for?
For Wrestle Kingdom, yeah.
But he'd still hurt himself. Or was this before he'd hurt himself?
No, this has been that would have been after.
Okay.
That was only 2 weeks
Just because I was wondering whether or not this was excessive.
I think it's a work. This is a worked bandage.
Right.
In the same way that when Omega came back, he was wearing that tight black top that was supposed to be this is trying to compress his muscles and stuff because his back is really hurting.
Yeah.
And his whole gimmick was, I'm actually much slower now. But it was all just a big work and he was totally fine. I think this was a working bandage.
It was a good bit of comedy for me, this bandage. I really enjoyed it.
Banaka1192 has been a member for 26 months in a row. Says, hey, the tournament starts on my birthday, Dan. Love to see Danielson wrestle, but he should care more about his health.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. This is what I was trying to allude to earlier on, which is that, you know, it's sort of become a meme, and I think it's more of I think this is one of the bad faith takes that I sort of see. People talking about AEW being the land of the broken people, you know, where it's like, I couldn't get cleared by WWE's doctors, so I'm going to show up in AEW instead, kind of thing. And you know, they get a lot of criticism, some of it earned, some of it not, for a sort of dangerous style and putting people to work when maybe they should be on the injury shelf or whatever. Like, I part of the reason I can't get on with Darby Allin is because it makes me tremendously uncomfortable to watch a human being do that to their own body. But that said, if Danielson is fine or at least medically able to go, he knows he's winding down anyway. You've got to get it in before it's too late, and maybe this was in the works already. You know, it's a complicated one, and we aren't privy to his medical record. So, you know, speculation is part of it.
People were just pointing out as well, he did have the bandage on during the Wrestle Kingdom promo. To Okada.
I've only seen him running away. When I was scrolling through X, it was seeing the little bits as he sort of carried on. I didn't watch the whole thing, so there you go.
Well, let's get into the rest of this show, which kicked things off with Andrade El Idolo versus Daniel Garcia. And Andrade didn't come out alone, though, for he had with him hot and flexible CJ Perry. Mm-hmm. The one thing I really like about Danny Garcia, who's just come off, you know, this MJF match that he had on Dynamite, a fabulous little match that it was as well. And he cut this great promo, talking about, you know, like, when are we going to get my chances? You know, when will I ever get a chance like that again? I loved the story they told within that match. And that kind of ties into what you were talking about, this idea that people have sort of fallen out of favor with AEW because it's not the AEW that they remember, because there's now focus on older guys.
Yeah, like we'll get to that at the end of the show.
And Sting and Flair and all this and the other. But here, like, I still think that Garcia is he feels over, and he feels like that match with Danielson has empowered him even more. And like, he can take L's like this to Andrade, but still come out feeling special and powerful. And things are still over. He goes outside to CJ Perry, and he just puts his arms up, and the crowd, like, you almost raise to their feet and start making noise. You can see people in the background also doing it. Because the dance is over. No matter what happens, the kid will always have the dance, and the dance is over.
People like a thrust, you know. We all like to gyrate now and again.
I also pretty enjoyed that when he turned his back, CJ Perry just did the dance back to him.
Around. Yeah.
It was very good. Andrade also did a woo when he put on the figure 8 and tapped out Garcia, and CJ celebrated with him afterwards while Miro watched on backstage. Miro versus Andrade, full gear. Wouldn't mind that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by this little pairing. First of all, I need a second to address CJ's socks and Stiletto's combination, which I found heinous, but that's a personal choice. But also, I think Andrade, I always think about Andrade and Zelina, right? As a pairing in NXT was just a piece of magic, especially during that period where I wasn't watching weekly NXT and I was watching, it was the match with Johnny Gargano at Philadelphia. Was it Philadelphia?
Yeah, I can't remember.
It was like in 2018 takeover.
The opener that they had.
Right, which was just...
It's one of the greatest openers NXT has ever had.
Oh, just beautiful stuff. So I like him having a person. I think CJ as well was certainly in that 2014 sort of run. She was like a modern Deborah, I always thought of her. Like a very refreshing update to the kind of...
A non-factor.
How dare you besmirch the name of Deborah?
I'm only saying what Steve said.
Steve who?
Austin. It's the whole thing with Deborah.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
Bam, she non-factor.
Bam, non-factor. She wasn't in 1999. I wasn't sharp enough to get you right. It's a Monday. What can I say? But no, like she was a refreshing update to that kind of manager valet role. I kind of enjoyed it. I would like for her to be more active in terms of being a manager. What I like about this story is that she's saying, well, I wanted to do this with you, but you don't want me because you've got whatever this is going on right now. So I'm going to go off and do my thing. I would love, for instance, for them to work in the storyline that you mentioned Andrade going into this Continental Classic. She managed it. She arranged it. She organized it. She is not just a person standing on the outside clapping. This is her client. That's the point. He said, I want to work with this person.
Yeah.
I would like for that to be part of the story as well, because I think it could be really interesting. And then, yes, when you take me towards Miro and Andrade, I'm all in.
I also, we talked about this a few weeks back, the idea that perhaps she is just doing it to create people for Miro to destroy.
Yeah, that's cool.
She isn't actually interested in managing other people. She is doing this to motivate Miro because she knows that her managing other people will infuriate him and take him back to the Miro of old. And she's just like, I did it with Action Andrade and I've done it with this. I'm going to do it with Andrade, a real, big dog in the yard.
Yeah.
And I can watch my husband kill this poor guy. And they'll have an absolute they'll have a banger of Full Gear if they get to that.
That's quite fun. I mean, the only thing I don't really like too much about that one is it's the sort of husband and wife, like, teasy. I don't know. There's something about it I don't love that much. But you can convince me with a story like that. It depends how they let it play out.
Nick Wayne then beat Dalton Castle using the Wayne's World after some help from Christian Cage. A fun little match.
I thought this was really good. I thought it was really effective because you had Dalton Castle. First of all, there was at one point he did like an almost angle slam thing from the corner, which I just absolutely loved. The move was incredible. And then he had this whole gut wrenching of Nick Wayne sort of thing.
Yeah.
I thought it told a really good story within the match of sort of, Nick Wayne, who, yes, did that massive heel turn and is aligned with someone that everybody loves to hate on this show in Christian Cage, but he's still a rookie. Like, he's still, that kid who got beaten to within an inch of his life by Swerve and things like that. So when he gets put into a match like this, he is quite easily, he's 150 pounds soaking wet or whatever it is. Like, he's going to be thrown around, but he'll find a way to, cheat his way to the victory or get the victory, whatever. I thought it was really effective. I really liked it.
I particularly enjoyed Nigel McGuinness saying that he's even heard rumors that Nick Wayne is going to take on Christian Cage's surname because he's such a father figure to him.
That's very, very funny.
And apparently Christian's group, disappointingly, is not called the Christian Coalition, which is what I've been calling them. The group name is apparently the Patriarchy.
Sure.
Which is great because it's such an easy segment to do, or an easy chant to do. F the Patriarchy.
Very funny.
So that's an easy win as a heel group. You're right there.
There's just a bit of fluff in my water.
Is it from your jumper?
I don't know if it's from my jumper or if it's from the biscuit I had earlier on. Or if it's just a piece of something else.
One of my favorite things on the show, my boy Hangman Page.
Yeah.
Cutting a promo on Swerve Strickland. Man, this is so good. He essentially in this promo said, kind of echoing some of the things that Swerve has been saying as well. Because one of the things I love about Swerve's motivation in this feud is that I didn't beat you. I didn't challenge you to a match because I hated you. I hated your opportunity, so I wanted to get that opportunity away from you. And then he felt that Hangman made it a personal thing. So it was like, I actually have no beef with you, but now you've made me have beef with you. And what Hangman is saying here is like, no, man, because I was having a match and I was getting involved. You could have just walked away. You beat me. Sure, it took you, all sorts of plunder, but you did beat me. And you could have just walked into the sunset with that victory and carried on your merry way. But you decided to make this personal. In fact, you actually made this too personal. So you're going to get me a full gear Texas death match, and I'm going to put you 6 feet under. And you're going to have to know, I want you for the next 2 weeks just be looking at all of your family members, knowing that you're never going to see their birthdays, their christenings, their weddings, because you're going to be in the abyss and I'm going to bury you. And then every November, I'm going to walk to your grave hand in hand with my son, and I'm going to let him piss on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good. He is the best babyface in the company.
It was a brilliant promo. It really was. And I also think that a Texas death match with a former world champion is yet another checkpoint in the making of Swerve Strickland. It's going to be such a statement.
Unbeaten in Texas death matches in AEW as well.
Really? Yeah. Wait, Swerve?
No, Hangman.
Hangman, that's it. So if Swerve gets the win, that's massive.
Yeah.
It's even if he were to get the L, it's still massive. You know what I mean? I think we spoke about it a lot last week, but this building of Swerve as, your next big guy is continuing apace, and I'm all for it.
LFI beat the Workhorsemen. My favorite moment of this was it was a brilliant way to build up Roosh, because it was Roosh and Dralistico. And Dralistico's in there with Anthony Drake. And Anthony Drake is they're doing a chop exchange thing. And Dralistico's not having much effect on the much bigger Drake. And then Anthony Drake chops him and he sells it big time. Mm-hmm. So then he tags in Roosh, who just walks in and just takes the chops that we've just seen work massively on this smaller lad. Has no effect on Roosh. But he chops Anthony Drake, who we've just seen is absorbing on these chops, and he sells it massively. What a brilliant way to sell Roosh and get over a lot of his character.
I thought this was a really great match. Again, there was a lot of this, and when they came out, the Workhorsemen hadn't been announced, if I'm not misremembering.
No, you are right.
So I was like, oh, here we go, LFI in the traditional Collision fashion, a couple of jobbers, and it's going to be a nice quick one. And then it turned into a really great match. The Workhorsemen, I think, are fantastic based on this. I've liked what they've done the past few weeks as well. The only thing I had was I was interested in it almost felt like a number of times in the match the Workhorsemen had their number. It was almost like they were being put over as more powerful when LFI have been booked incredibly powerfully and strongly going into this. I thought that was an interesting choice. Didn't take away from what I thought was an incredible showing off both teams, but I was just interested in why they went down that road.
It's usually oftentimes that's the Ric Flair mentality. Ric Flair used to say, I don't see what the point of me beating jobbers is.
Yeah.
Because I get nothing. What do I get from beating a nobody? Kenny Omega, because during the pandemic came under fire from some online critics because he had a competitive match with Alan Angels on an episode of Dynamite. People were like, oh, aren't you supposed to be like Kenny Omega? Why are you going toe to toe with this Alex? Because then I beat him. And didn't it say more about me that I beat this guy that could almost beat me? Didn't that put me over more? And I guess that's the argument here with LFI and Workhorsemen. I don't think it always works.
No.
Because you have to pick the right guy. I don't think it particularly worked with the Alan Angels match either. But that is the argument and the theory behind it.
Well, because there's something between constant squashes and constant, going toe to toe with a nobody kind of thing. There's something in Action Andretti taking out Jericho. I know it's a meme at this point, but the idea of I overlooked you and suddenly you got it over on me kind of thing. Or I wasn't thinking too much about you, but it actually turns out you're quite good. So this was more competitive than I was expecting, which Gunther is a great example of it, where he's able to look powerful while still giving to his opponents kind of thing. But every now and again, I think it is really effective to just utterly decimate somebody and be like, I'm Roosh. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like within that spot, that's the one you highlighted there is a great example of how you can do that within the match and still give. When I realized it was the Workhorsemen, kind of makes more sense for them to have a bit more.
Yeah,
you know,
a bit more of an established.
Yeah,
just two lads.
Yeah,
and as has been pointed out, JD Drake, not Anthony Drake. Anthony Henry is his tag partner, and I got the names mixed up.
You shipped them.
I did. House of Black cut a promo afterwards, basically challenging Starks and Bill for the titles. More on that in a little bit. And Julia Hart also laid her sight on Chris Statlander in the TBS Championship.
That she did.
Big thumbs up from me. And then Lexi interviewed Statlander and Willow. And what they announced was it's going to be a triple threat for the TBS Championship. That's 5 women on the card.
I can't find a fourth woman to put in that match to make it a Grand Tradition Fatal 4-Way.
No.
That's a shame.
No. I mean, with such a rich history, you don't want to overdo that history.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to make out of it, do you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Otherwise, it's a meme at that point. What they've announced is a triple threat match. It's Statlander versus the winner of Hart and Willow, which was on this show, and the winner of Red Velvet and Sky Blue, which will be coming next week. Why it's Red Velvet? She just lost a match last week. But
don't get me started on that. We'll get to that in a minute.
We'll get to that in a little bit. But it's her and Sky Blue. So likely it'll be Sky Blue because they're already doing this story with Blue and Statlander.
Julia referenced it as well. Sky and Willow rejecting the gift she offered.
Yeah,
you know. So there's a bit of something in there as well. So
hey, I'm digging this story more than I am the Storm and Sheeta story.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. Like I'm quite digging the character work in this. I'm really digging Julia Hart. I'm really digging Sky Blue and Statlander and Willow. So I'm way more into this TBS feud than I am the main women's title feud. It's
a very simple feud, and I think they're doing well with what they're being given. I think I always like Willow. I like Sky Blue a lot. I think she continues to develop really well. Julie Hart's fantastic in her role. Is Stat injured? Stat hasn't wrestled since Battle of the Belts. It's been 3 weeks, and she's just stood in literally the same part of the frame, doing the same interview.
Well, it's because they only have time for one women's match. Dan, like, what do you want her to do?
We're going to rip you apart.
Dan, she can't wrestle matches. Julia Hart was already having a match.
That's fair. But like, not even on Rampage. You know what I mean? Like, they're not.
Well, someone else was having that match, Dan. Come on, use your brain.
It's interesting that she was given this run as this quite defending champ, and then suddenly she's just stood
there doing interviews.
She's not moved. She stood there the whole time,
dude. This isn't a prediction, it's a spoiler. I literally said this was going to happen to Hikaru Shida.
Right.
After her third match she had after winning the belt, I said to her, she's not going to wrestle now till Full Gear.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens.
Yeah.
You win a title belt, you then wrestle for 3 weeks on TV as the working champion, as the defending champion, and then that stops. This happens apart from Saraya, happens every single time.
He loves the tradition.
He's a traditional man.
He loves it. He likes to repeat patterns. But that said, yeah. It's going to be a good match. It's hard to get passionate about the women in AEW because without getting in trouble.
I said this about Mariah May debuting on Dynamite.
Yeah.
So it's look, I've done the excitement thing. I will believe it when I see it.
I'm excited for Mariah May.
I'm excited that she is in the company.
Yeah.
But am I I'm not going to start fancy booking things for her, even though I sort of did on the show. Because I was
can't help herself.
Well, only because I was there's an easy story that you can tell here, which is that she idolizes Toni Storm. She followed the same path as Toni Storm. She went to Japan like Toni Storm did, and now she's come to AEW so she can face Toni Storm. And what she's going to find is a literal washed up actor and being oh, you're not Toni Storm.
Right.
And she can almost beat the Toni Storm back into her.
Oh, that's fun.
We're going to drop the timeless thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't drop the timeless thing.
Problem is, it's over, which is, possibly going to struggle. Or you do the Mickie James Trish.
I was thinking Mickie James. That's where I was at.
Roderick Strong beat Darius Martin with
very brave of Roddy Strong.
End of Heartache. Neck Strong, neck health awareness month may be over, but its memory stays strong.
NHAM, as we'll call it.
And I loved how much of a meal he made getting out of his wheelchair.
Yeah.
They're taking on the next race. He's got the mustache and the glasses, looking like such a little dog. Then he gets in the ring and it's just Roderick Strong. And it's wonderful because this was set up on the promo on Dynamite, which is I need to remind people who Roderick Strong is. And he did in this match because this was a Roderick Strong squash match and it was great to watch. And I was like, genuinely, got to throw. I made in my notes here. God, it's great to see Roddy wrestle again. But then he goes back into doing the Roddy comedy stuff, which I'm also really enjoying. I got a big kick out of this.
I enjoyed the match. I want to make that clear before I get into my nitpick of the week. But like the idea for me of Roddy Strong having this bad neck but being so brave and getting to the ring and wrestle anyway, I would have liked him to lean more into it, because you got Darius hitting uppercuts and enziguris, and like that stuff would affect your neck. I would like for Roddy Strong to be like, don't, like, it's me, you can't touch my neck. Actually, my neck is like whatever, like don't let him do these moves. They're perfectly legitimate moves, but he's a heel. He should be complaining. I would like for them to play with that, sell the bit even harder, because it's a great bit that I really enjoy, and cowardly heel Roddy, appealing to the ref and that kind of thing. It just sounds like quite a fun little quirk for me.
I like that a lot because, but I suppose it's a character that we've sort of seen before. This sort of like, because his neck's not hurt, like his
no, of course, but that's
neck
it.
is fine,
that's
that's where sort of the comedy of it lands. But I actually quite like the difference in being a cowardly heel that then just gets in and is a killer wrestler.
Yeah,
but then goes out to be a cowardly heel again afterwards.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me it was the idea that he was like he would be like, ref, don't let him do this, and then he'd wrestle because he's fine.
Yeah,
he'd wrestle exactly the way he was,
and then doing lots of neck based offense himself.
Yeah. Exactly like that. There's something in that I found quite fun. But the match was great. Like, it's Roddy Strong. What do you expect?
TK and Danielson then announced the G1, and we got our women's match of the night. It was a bit of a banger as well. It was Julia Hart versus Willow Nightingale, the winner of which will advance to the triple threat with Chris Statlander. Sky Blue was watching from backstage. A lot of this was Julia working over the arm of Willow, so then when she went to hit the Doctor Bomb, she couldn't quite do it. And in fact, actually, when she did eventually get to do it, she didn't quite have the oomph to be able to get her properly over. So Julia sort of like just kind of jumped out of the move, falling onto her butt. I enjoyed the moment when Hart was doing Heartless, and then sort of like power, like, so then Willow powers out of this, and Julia goes to run the ropes to do another move, but at the same time Willow's already run the ropes to hit her with the pounce. Really enjoyed that, but eventually Hart hit the moonsault for the win. Very, very good towards the end.
It was good. This was another one though where I thought Willow was in control for most of it, and then Julia got the win. And then I thought about it and I was like, oh, we had that last week with Lance Archer and Darby. This is just a style that they seem to like, to be able to allow your opponent to not look weak in defeat kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I get it, and I get what they're doing. I did really just appreciate that this was given a fair bit of time. I like Willow Nightingale a lot. I like Julia Hart a lot. I think she's got a great look. I think she's got a great style.
22.
Outrageous.
It's outrageous that she is 22 years old.
I
still can't believe it.
Yeah.
Because I'm there watching her in this match, and I'm like, you are so much better than all the 22-year-old wrestlers that I've seen over the years.
And fearless in many ways, and there's the commitment to this character, and I think, which, I say character, it's not one of those like depth. It's a wrestling character. Like it's pretty shallow in terms of construction, but I do like what she's doing with it. I like that she somehow fits in a very natural way with three beardy, tattooed men. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and it's credit to her, I think. So I'm quite pleased for her to get this opportunity. I think I probably would have her as my pick at Full Gear, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, going off the back of, we said this going into Wrestle Dream. That idea was like, I could see her being the one to win a Wrestle Dream because she's so over at the moment. I think it's going to be, I think it might be the Sky Blue and her cancel each other out. Statlander gets the win, because that can then further the Statlander Blue stuff. But I also wouldn't be surprised at a world in which Julia Hart walks out of that match as TBS champion.
It's the wrinkle of her calling out Willow and Sky and sort of seeding that idea that they're rejecting this sort of gift, and you can play with Sky seem to be more taken by whatever the mist was than Willow, kind of thing. I think you could do a lot of interesting things with her as TBS champion.
Lexi interviewed Ricky Starks and Big Bill, who I thought had a really good line when they were basically talking about, like, look, we're not even going to wrestle these guys. Like, I don't really want to see them in catering. Like, I'm not going to do any interview segments with them. And then Lexi's like, oh, actually, Tony Khan just told me you're going to be wrestling all three of them at the pay-per-view. Yeah. They're like, what? No! That's not the way it works. Well, how are we the last people to learn about this? All of that's grand. However, one of the other matches on Full Gear is Jericho and Omega versus the Young Bucks, with the Young Bucks' #1 contendership to the tag titles on the line. So why then are the AEW World Tag Team Championships being competed for by 3 other teams?
Further, one of those teams, fairly conclusively, and in fact established in words on an episode of Collision in the form of FTR, was said they are back of the queue now. That's it. That's all she wrote. Top guys out. Job done. Back of the line. They're in this match. They could win their titles back. That's a really odd... Tony Khan likes a sort of mazy, hazy way of booking. Some people really get it. I struggle with it sometimes, but then at the end of it, I'm like, no, I do see your point. I did enjoy that. This is one of those in which neither. It's just, this is nonsense.
Well, okay, there's a reason why this has happened the way that it has happened. And that'll be because when they were doing the Jericho, Omega, and Young Bucks match, they wanted to have the stakes of Jericho and Omega have to split up if they lose. So you look at that, it's like, okay, great. But why would Jericho and Omega put that on the line? Well, what if the Young Bucks put their #1 contendership on the line? Brilliant. Okay, we've got that sorted. Not really thinking about what the implications of that over here. It's just you had an end goal in mind, which is, well, the stipulation we want to do is Jericho and Omega have to split up. How do we get that? Okay, we'll do X, Y, and Z. But that causes problems over here. And really, this one also doesn't matter because, like, who gives a fuck if Jericho and Omega can't tag anymore?
They've been tagging for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Sorry for swearing, but, like, who cares?
Yeah.
So, but that's now the stakes that are on the line.
Yeah.
And now they will likely win and get the #1 contendership to the tag titles. But I'm now also on that very same show going to be watching 3 other teams. I get simple stuff.
Yeah.
But it just raises logical questions like, yeah, but why?
There are going to be some people who say, and justifiably so, because if this is how you watch any program, fair enough. But like, there are going to be some people who say, so
yeah, well, that's fine.
And that's that is what it is.
Dude, I watched WWE from 2005 to 2018, and every week was going like, yeah, sure, why not?
Sure, why?
Sure,
yeah.
why? Well, that's just the way it works. I guess. Like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you have to be like, but it doesn't make any sense.
So my response to that is, do we think AEW is better than WWE in that period of time? And I think the answer is yes. I think they are better than that. Yeah. And I think it's so when we talk about this, it's like holding them to that higher standard that they have set themselves.
What I mean is, as wrestling fans, we are prone to just be like, it's fine. Like, it's wrestling. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
It'll become one of those, hey, that happened.
But at the same time, post Full Gear, no one's ever going to really question it either, because one of those matches will have happened and we're moving on to the other thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're going into their show being like, I think this could have done with a bit more thought here.
That's it. And this is where, when you are booking this much stuff and you're doing it mostly on your own, as I seem to still understand the structure of AEW's booking is very much still, which if I was a Fulham fan, I'd be a bit cross. But that's why you want a little team together. That's why leaning on Danielson more, as reports were stated, is a good idea. Having that kind of continuity, this is a problem that you come up against when you write things, right? When you are a writer, you have an idea, you want to do this, well, then you get that's why when you write a time travel novel, and I appreciate that we're kind of going off piste here a little bit, but when you write a time travel novel, you have to be really clear on your rules. Otherwise, you start forming little plot holes all over the place. You have to establish that world. So if your issue is, well, I'd like to put this on the line, but that, creates a problem over here. Well, maybe I can't put that on the line, so let's find something else. Or maybe do we work out that, the Young Bucks take the titles for this one, and then it becomes about, but do I want the championship to go on there? So maybe I need to change this stipulation. These are things that you have to work out. Now, his response in this situation has been, sod it, doesn't matter. And arguably, I suppose it doesn't. But that's not how I consume my media.
It might not be sorry, it doesn't matter. It might just be, I didn't think of that.
Right. But anyway, let's move on.
But for example, in Fantasy Booking Warfare, the most recent episode that just went up, where I once again did a bang-up job, I thought a really funny conclusion to my pay-per-view, or a really funny thing to happen towards the end of my show, my fantasy booking would just be, it's Tony Khan versus Jim Cornette in a street fight with Dixie Carter as a special guest referee. LOL, lol, TNA. That's a funny thing to do. That's a very silly thing to write down on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So I wrote that down. It's one of the first things that I wrote down. And then I sort of just booked backwards from there, and then, had some other pieces. But I actually didn't realize that until I was reading it back on the prompter here in this studio, that had already disbanded Team TNA, which basically
Right.
would have disbanded Dixie Carter from the company.
Yeah.
But I'd already planned to do this joke at the end. And so when I sat down, Dave was like, why is Dixie Carter the special guest referee? And I was like, I don't know.
Well,
I
but
was
also
like, contractually, she's still there, Dave.
in my cruelly robbed fantasy booking, I did a similar thing where I was like, right, I've booked a really good run of time, and then I realized I ran into WWE's problem, which is I don't know how to get from Survivor Series to the Royal Rumble.
Oh, I can tell you how to do that.
So I just went, suspend him. Suspend him for 60 days.
No, what you do is you have Triple H team with Cactus Jack at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
That is a way you delay something from Survivor Series through to.
Yeah.
Which I did do, and that's how I won. But anyway, on the Jericho note, we then had Powerhouse Hobbs versus our lad. Powerhouse Hobbs won. It was more of a backdrop to the bigger thing, which was Don Callis cutting a promo to set up the whatever the new Yakuza game is. Boss fight, the game that they're doing, the
Spawn match.
The Spawns match, yeah. And it was there to put over Powerhouse Hobbs versus Paul White.
Mhm.
Now, I've been very clear on the record here, and I will say it again, and I will repeat this ad nauseum on that Dynamite show as well. There is only one conclusion to this match, and that is Powerhouse Hobbs hits Paul White with the world's strongest slam and pins him. That is the only conclusion you should be doing to this match. If that is not your purpose, then I think you have made an error with this match. Sponsor match, sure. But if your whole point, a whole thing you're doing with Jericho and Hobbs was to try and put over Hobbs, then build that up further and have him beat the Giants. And so he has then beaten the biggest man in pro wrestling, and he is now the new Giants of AEW, or whatever you want to phrase this as. So that really, for me, is the only conclusion I have for that match. But actually, my annoyance I've currently got with this storyline didn't happen on Collision. It was happening over in DDT, where Jericho beat Takeshita.
Yeah.
Why did Jericho beat Takeshita, A, in DDT, B, the week before this show? Why on earth did Jericho beat Takeshita? Because what does that do for Takeshita? More to the point, it undermines the Powerhouse Hobbs things from a few weeks back. Why did Jericho win? What an asinine thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if the counter argument is that how many of your audience will watch that? And like, I don't mean to be glib or flippant with that, because honestly, I wouldn't have known had I not decided to delve into the arsehole of Reddit. But like, and you bringing it up to me, that could have been my very first time I've learned that kind of thing. So there's an argument to be made that, it's fine. But also, I think that's a fair assessment from you.
I think the reason I bring it up is more on this. Jericho puts over younger guys. And I'm like, no, I don't think Jericho does. I think Jericho...
Action Andretti.
I think Jericho just attaches himself. He's a very smart person. He just attaches himself to hot angles or hot groups or hot storylines to make himself appear as a more hot act in the company than he actually is.
He's also the king of saying something with enough conviction that you start believing him.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really mean that as an insult. Like,
I've had this conversation with Ollie multiple times over. I remember back in 2018 when Jericho, first left WWE, and the very first thing he did was get on being the Elite.
Yeah.
And I was like, of course he did. That's the hot thing in pro wrestling right now. Of course he teams with the Young Bucks and the Jericho Cruise because that's the hot thing right now, because he wants to. And then like a couple of years later, what did he do? Tagged with Danhausen. Why? Because Danhausen was the hot thing in pro wrestling.
He's in the bloodline. Well, he touches himself to everything. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of it.
He started a feud with MJF. Why? Because MJF was getting hot.
This
Orange Cassidy's another one.
This began the period of this episode of Collision where I sort of felt myself checking out, because I'll be honest, I'm not interested in seeing Paul White wrestle. I'm not interested in this situation. I will say during this squash match, at one point, after the squash match where Hobbs looks impressive again, and I completely agree with you, that is what you should be using this match for, to get over Hobbs even more, given that one great visual. Carlos said, I have one thing to say, and Paul White on commentary went, I doubt it. And that popped me. I had a big giggle at that. And he said, if I can be serious for a minute, and that means Lance Storm confirmed, All Elite. That was the most takeaway I had from this whole period and all of this. It's just something where I'm like, that's my bathroom break for Dynamite. I'm
actually looking forward to the match,
right?
Because Kenny's in it, and
sure,
and I like Kenny, and Takeshita's in the match.
Yeah.
Carl Fleck's in the match. Brian Cage is oddly in the match because I'm guessing Sammy Guevara couldn't get cleared, and so Brian Cage is in there instead. Lol, I guess
that's fair.
But also, someone just pointed out in the chat there, the one thing I actually forgot when I was having my little Jericho rant is that the whole point of Takeshita was he pinned Kenny Omega twice.
Yeah.
And pinned Kenny Omega twice in a week.
Oh, right. Of course he did. Yeah.
Pinned him at All In, pinned him at All Out. And what did I actually do for Takeshita in the end? Not a great deal. And now he's just been beaten by Jericho. So, there you go. Worked out for everyone, I guess. Anyway, Lexi interviewed FTR, simple promo, and that led into our main event of Lance Archer and the Righteous versus Darby, Sting, and Adam Copeland, which basically was all designed to build to the Copeland hot tag, which he did, then ran wild, including a dive, and then they won.
It was a good hot tag.
Very good hot tag. Very simple story of the match as well, which is they're putting this over very, very good on commentary, which is why I quite liked this match in terms of using this as a building block for the pay-per-view in 2 weeks' time, which is that the Righteous instantly gelled as a group. They were working together as a group, as a team, whereas the other three, they weren't disparate, but it was like, they don't seem to have as much cohesion as the Righteous and Archer do. Like, that's why they are dominating this match, because these three are not working together. But they're not thinking like a team. But by the end of it, they were a cohesive unit, which now puts them in a much stronger position going up against the Christian Coalition at the pay-per-view. So as a match and a story of a match, massive thumbs up from me, because that's a really good building block for the pay-per-view.
I agree with that. I think it was funny. It started with a "This is awesome" chant, and my initial thought was, "Baby, it's the Righteous. Like, it's fine. This words matter." But
it's not because Sting was wrestling.
I appreciate it's because Sting was wrestling.
And he's
what I was about to say. Yeah. But like, not everything's awesome.
Sting wrestling is. Is
it?
Yeah, considering that 3 years ago we didn't think it was going to happen.
That's fair.
And, the last thing that he did was get beaten by Triple H, and then unfortunately very badly injured by Seth Rollins.
The presence is awesome.
That is not a great end to a Sting career.
I'm being catty.
So now,
and also you love Sting. I get that.
I do.
The wrestling itself though,
it's great.
Is it?
Of course it is. Sting doing Sting stuff. He does the splash, he does the DDT, he does the Scorpion.
I have no notes.
Like, what do you want him to do?
I don't want him to be wrestling. I don't want 60-year-olds to be wrestling in the main event of my television show. I get that. Like, I'm being flippant and probably too harsh on it. But like, I'd seen some really good stuff elsewhere in the show, and I was like, I'm not. And maybe the Ric Flair thing has a sour taste in my mouth, where it just feels the whole thing. I'll come round to it in the end, because I'm just being grumpy. But like,
yeah, the Flair thing.
To be clear, I have all the respect in the world for Sting. Like, as a presence in the industry, as what he does, it just doesn't work for me. It's not what I want from my TV at this point.
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
That's a personal thing, and it's not about whether or not Sting is good enough or Sting ever was good enough, because that would be a stupid argument to be trying to make. Like, did I enjoy it when they eventually got there? Yeah. I did, because like you say, it was fun when it was like the hot tag was very fun. Also, Darby looking like a bunch of girls I went to high school with little booty shorts and tights, and then the crop top.
Yeah,
was fun as well. But yeah, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like
I 100% get what you're saying. There is a shelf life with nostalgia. Runs right,
and I wasn't a WCW fan.
And that's also fair, because this is nostalgia, right? Like when him and Darby had a tag match on Dynamite, that was just there to be. And like at the end of it, I was like, nothing was really gained from this match, but the live crowd had a great time because we got to see Sting wrestler, and I had fun watching it at home because Sting did the no sell and he took them both down, and then he hit his moves and he won. I think back to when I saw Jushin Thunder Liger. This has been 2018. And I saw him. I went to a Rev Pro show the same weekend actually. We did Wrestling MediaCon. So on the Friday, it couldn't have been Wednesday or Thursday, whichever day it was. I went to a Rev Pro show at York Hall, and it was a TV taping they were doing because they just got onto TV and a very short-lived deal that they had. And Liger was on that show, so I watched Liger have 3 matches on that show. And he did the same thing in all 3 of those matches. And every time I had a massive smile on my face because I was watching Jushin Thunder Liger at wrestle. And then we booked him for MediaCon. And then Jushin Thunder Liger on that show did the same match twice. And I had a beaming smile on my face because I was watching Jushin. I watched him do the same match 5 times over a 3-day period. And I had a big smile on my face every time because I got to watch Jushin Liger. And that's what I'm feeling with Sting at the moment. I just get to watch Sting do his thing. And I'm not going to get to do that post-March. I'm never going to get to see Sting do that again. So anytime I get to see Sting wrestle on TV, I just got a big smile on my face, and I just want him to play the hits.
That's a fair assessment.
I'm not looking for him to do anything flashy. I just want you to do your greatest hits tour. I don't want to hear the stuff off your new album, because no one's into your new album stuff. They just want to hear you play the hits.
I think that's a completely fair assessment. It does, I think, probably for me tie into the same thing I have with Darby bouncing all over the thing and taking those bumps on stairs and all that stuff, like the coffin drop onto a coffin, where I'm like, anyone in their right mind would tell you that is a bad idea for your back, which is precious. Like, don't take the piss. Which is that you are a 60-year-old man who had a serious injury there, like, you know, and it just makes me wince, kind of thing. It's a different kind of wince that I have with Edge. I've kind of got more comfortable with what Edge is doing now. It's a similar wince that I had with Saraya, but they're not 60, you know. They're like that's probably where it comes from, where it's like, I enjoy your presence in this group. I enjoy your presence as Darby's, like, you know, adopted granddad. I don't enjoy the feeling I have when I watch this person potentially put themselves at risk. I think that's probably where it comes from. But everything that you just said is a perfectly reasonable, and I'm sure 90%, probably 99% of the people watching feel as well.
But I also get, like, I think what you're also watching is a 60-year-old man wrestling in a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like, and it's, you know, during his TNA run, there was a period where I was like, oof, I'm not sure this is worth it, because this is main event Sting level matches. Difference there is that he was also often going for the world title.
Right.
Like, here he is just...
he's a part of a story rather than the story.
He's a part-time nostalgia act that is getting more TV time now because we are going to the end of his run. But yeah, I had fun.
That's fair.
That's fair. I had fun with Sting. When I was doing CBW, like when we did the character of Silver Bro, Laurie was messaging me when we were going back for doing season 2. And there's been like a big gap between season 1 and season 2 in terms of like the in-universe story. And so everyone was changing up how their character looked. And he said to me, "It's like, how's Silver Bro changed?" And I said, "Hey, he hasn't." I was like, it's the same character, he just looks older. I was like, he's a bit more grey, like his mullet's receding a little bit more, but he is just the same character. And Laurie was getting so frustrated with me not... I think in his mind, not putting any effort into it, because I'd be like, no, he's the same. But my rationale behind it was like, the Silver Bro is a nostalgia character. He thinks in his mind, I'm just here to play the hits. So when I do matches in CBW, I just do the same 3 moves over and over again, because that is what, in Silver Bro's mind, is what the audience wants to see from him, as opposed to trying new things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like I'm at with Sting.
Yeah.
Sting comes out, does the Stinger Splash, Scorpion Death Drop, and the lock. I'm like, yeah, great.
Yeah.
I had a grand time with it.
Fair enough.
My other note I actually had about this match is that Dutch I find to be an incredible wrestler, in that I don't think it's the same wrestler that makes the entrance that does the match. The second that man takes off his sunglasses, he looks like a completely different person.
Yeah.
Because coming down to the ring, he looks like John Goodman in The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And then he wrestles a match, he looks nothing like John Goodman in The Big Lebowski. It's amazing what a pair of sunglasses will do.
Oh, literally. Tell me about it.
But anyway, I thought that was a good episode. I'd have given it a strong 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I probably 3 out of 5 feels about the right. With thumbs up. I enjoyed myself.
Let's get into your Ultra Chats. But before we do that, let's shout out some Patreon backers over on patreon.com/WrestleTalk. Go and head on over there, because we got some great stuff. Last week, myself and Dan did the mailbag episode.
We did.
This week, it'll be behind the scenes. Well, maybe we'll be talking about this new direction, this new thing we're doing with the WrestleTalk news. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that behind the scenes. Week after that will be After Dark, and then the week after that will be myself and Oliver Davis reviewing Survivor Series 2014 for WrestleTalk Extra. So head on over to patreon.com/WrestleTalk to get involved. And if you're one of our $25 and above Patreon Pledgehammers, you get named right out on this show, like these fine folks, always leaving the crowd wanting Brian Moore.
Too lot to handle, Lottie McCullough.
Manipulating Manny Umaria.
The needs of the Manny Cornish outweigh the needs of the few.
Very good.
Thank you.
How'd you like them apples, Marcel Jura?
Have a glass of sherry, Martel, Jay Simmons.
The real boss, Matt Robinson.
Max, Kurt Wallander Wallen.
Michael, Mark for Life, Plowman.
This is some kind of Patreon shout-out. Nate dropped surname.
The Batsman, Nathan Batty.
The intriguing infrared, near Alfredo Vial.
Thank you all so much. That is our Hall of Fame class for the 13th of November, 2023. But hey, if you're in the mood to click links, we'll be doing the rest of your Ultrachats in just a moment. But why not get tickets for our Survivor Series party that we'll be hosting in 2 weeks' time? But don't just take it from me, take it from me. Do you have plans to watch Survivor Series? Well, why not come and watch WWE Survivor Series live and in person with the WrestleTalk team with over 100 other wrestling fans, along with a live version of our partsFUNknown board game series, No Holds Barred, at the Long Arm Pub and Brewery in London. Not only will we be watching Survivor Series together, but we'll be doing our live reactions to the show from the pub, which means you will have the chance to be on camera and part of the WrestleTalk live experience. This is the best way to watch wrestling pay-per-views, and tickets are available right now. Get your tickets today, and we'll see you there to be part of moments like this.
No, it's Kyrie! It's Kyrie Sane! It's Kyrie Sane! Oh my God! Kyrie Sane is back! It's Kyrie! It's Kyrie Sane!
It is a wonderful fun time, so you can head on to the link in the video description down below, or being put into the chat by our wonderful moderating crew to get your tickets to watch Survivor Series in person with us.
It's always a fun time.
Cannot wait. The Derbies of Derbs here says, hello lads, who else would you add to the tournament from outside of AEW? I think Vikingo would be so much fun.
It's funny because Vikingo feels, I know he's not, but it feels like an AEW kind of guy. So yeah, someone like that would be fun.
I think a lucha lad in there would be really good, because like a few people have said, I saw someone earlier say Bandido, but like a commander would be awesome in there. Bandido would be my pick, but like, man, Vikingo would be so good in this.
I'd probably pull for Zach, as I always do.
Yep. EJO says, g'day EW, why is it Golden Jets and not Jericho Omega? I think I've actually made this point on the podcast before.
Got to be golden.
But as I was informed, the Jets are a Winnipeg sports team.
Hockey, probably?
I would imagine so. And they are both from Winnipeg.
Right.
And therefore, they are the Golden Jets. Golden obviously comes from the Kenny side of things.
And much to the chagrin of JR, everything is golden.
Yeah.
Why has everything got to be golden?
And I'd say
my God,
Kenny and the Jets was right there.
Oh, lovely.
But they decided not to go for that. Actually, thank you, Kato, for correcting me, I would say. It said Red Velvet beat Ruby Soho on Rampage. So that's why Red Velvet has the match with Sky Blue.
Yeah.
Absolutely, bang on the banana, and I stand corrected on it. Like the man in orthopedic shoes, I stand corrected.
Very nice.
That's a Jerry Lawlerism. That's a very good point made. And Kid Cuddy here says, maybe I missed something on Rampage or BTE, but I got questions that I need answers. They wrestle similar still, so why isn't Andrade with Rouge? Did they break up? Yes, ages ago, and that was on Dynamite, I believe. Wasn't Dalton Castle and the boys a heel team against the Acclaimed? No, that was a mess of a segment. Yes,
they were playing the antagonist in that section.
Yeah.
Why
beat your new monster group? Because they're not the new monster group. But most importantly, Edge said that Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus were going to turn on Christian, but why is Luchasaurus with Christian in the first place? Because he's the right hand of destruction, and he sees Christian as, like, with Christian, he was able to become the TNT champion. Only thing I remember them saying is that he was something about Marco Stunt during the Jungle Boy rivalry. There was that as well.
I also feel like I do feel like they did sort of pitch them as this really interesting new sort of trio, and it was very much their coming out party after their alignment with Jay the Snake. This is the Righteous, I mean. So having them lose was an interesting choice.
It's not what I've done. But they're not your new monster heel act.
Certainly yet.
No, they're a new faction.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have beaten them in their debut match either.
And Lance Archer lost last week as well.
But it's not like, they've just debuted and they're taking out the world champion.
Yeah, right.
They are a lower mid-card group.
Yeah.
So, and like the Andrade and Rouge thing, they have been addressing that on Collision for the past few weeks now. This idea, Lexi keeps asking Andrade about his relationship with Rouge and La Faction and being like, what do you make of this? And he's like, look, it's none of your business. I will announce that when I am ready. So they have been telling that story on TV. So, yes, it is just you. But anyway, I think that's it. And Eternal Blue has been a member for 28 months in a row. Just says, hi, Luke. Hi, Dan. That's it. And that's how we're going to end off this show. We're going to quickly end the poll with what you thought of this episode. And 72% gave it a thumbs up, with 20% thumbs in the middle, thumbs down 7%. That sounds about right.
Yeah,
I'd say that's
a bit
about
higher
right.
than thumbs down for me.
I usually on AEW streams, I think that's
No, I mean
usually...
for me, I feel like that's...
right, yeah. No, I think on AEW streams, I would expect that. I also saw someone there just say Mike Bailey to be part of the tournament. I would very much love that, because anything the speedball in is great. So that gets my seal of approval. But that is going to do it for this episode of the show. Thank you all so much for watching and or listening. Please do press the subscribe button if you've made it this far and it's your first time here. Hit the thumbs up button as well. Leave a comment down below with what you thought of the show. We're back tomorrow with a stacked old episode of Raw. Got a tag title match. It's Cody and Jay versus the Judgment Day.
Otis and Shinsuke.
We got Ciampa and Kaiser, I think, is also on the show. And there was something else. That's Natty and Tegan going up against the tag champs.
Yes.
So yeah, a stacked old show.
Indeed.
For Raw. We'll be reviewing that tomorrow here on this channel. Till then, I've been going DAD. That has been the Professor of the Truth. Your Jam That Champion, Dan Layton. Jam that jam.